Good morning, Tom Browneagle here with my good friend Mark Stern from the Browneagle team, and we're going to be talking about some really good stuff today. We're focusing on the topic today is short sale versus foreclosure. And you know, Mark, from a timing perspective, how is a short sale different from a timing perspective than a foreclosure?
Well, Tom, there's a lot of differences in between a short sale and a foreclosure. But you know, one of the things that people find very compelling as a reason to do a short sale versus a foreclosure is the timing and control aspect of doing a short sale versus foreclosure. When you're doing a short sale, you're entering into an agreement. You're entering into contracts with the bank. You're entering into contracts with a prospective buyer, and you're setting the timetable. In a foreclosure, you're in a reactive position where you're in a place of uncertainty. You've been unable to make your mortgage payments for some time. Maybe it's a short period of time, maybe it's a long period of time, and you're just waiting. You're waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for the marshals to show up and serve papers. You're waiting for a court date to happen. And even when you get that first court date, that still really doesn't even set your timetable. That's just the beginning of a fairly lengthy process that's going to start you down a path of spending time in court, of having to hire an attorney to defend a foreclosure.
Got it.
Which takes you down a whole path of the foreclosure process. You know, there's a very common misconception about foreclosure that people think that once they've been served papers, they've been foreclosed on.
Right. That's the furthest from the truth.
Getting served papers is the beginning of a process that can take anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, and beyond, the end of which isn't necessarily a final resolution. You know, people think when they are done with the foreclosure that it's over. Unfortunately, the large majority of the time when people are being foreclosed on, the end result of the foreclosure process is actually a deficiency judgment, which starts a whole nother round of dealing with creditors and collection agencies about the bank trying to now first collect on a deficiency judgment.
Gotcha. So just for clarity, the deficiency judgment is the difference that you owe, right? That a buyer or that a seller would owe on their mortgage, right? Yes. After the sale.
Yeah. Well, the majority of the time, people who are in foreclosure, the house is taken by the bank and sold, and whatever it's sold for, either because of the condition of the property, because of market conditions, because of lack of maintenance on the property, you know, or other conditions, the property has not brought fair market value.
Yep. And
the property, even if it's not a distressed property, the sale does not satisfy the debt, and the bank is still looking for the balance of the debt. So they go back to court at the end of a foreclosure to get a deficiency judgment in order to recover the balance of the money that the bank is owed.
So you're on the hook with a foreclosure. You're still on the hook for the money.
The end is the beginning of round two.
Gotcha. Okay. So in a nutshell, really with a short sale, my experience has been, because we've done so many of them together, that with a short sale you put closure. You know, we at the end of a short sale, we have negotiated typically your deficiency away, your expenses go away, are covered by expenses covered by the bank, and you get to rebuild almost immediately.
Yes. Well,
right?
when we do a short sale, you know, there's, as I said, there's contracts that we're entering into. You know, you're entering into a contract with the buyer of your home to buy the house, but you're also entering into a contract with the bank that holds the mortgage on the property, and they're issuing a short sale approval letter, which is a contract. It's an agreement with them that they are going to accept a sum certain for the sale of the property in satisfaction of that debt. And that at the end of that process, once you've sold the house and conveyed the money to them that they've agreed to accept, it's over.
Yeah.
It's done. That you've closed on a house, you've sold the house, maybe it took 3-4 months to get a short sale negotiated and approved, to actually get to the closing table, that you walk away from the closing table knowing you're finished. that the bank is going to be sending in that last report to the credit bureaus indicating that you've settled your debt with them, okay? And they're not going to be sending any more derogatory reports to the credit bureaus afterwards because you've settled your debt.
Yep.
When you've gone down to foreclosure, the foreclosure end result, the bank is now reporting that your debt has been discharged or that it's been foreclosed upon, which has a much more substantial impact on your credit report.
Yep.
But that's not the end. Then they're first reporting a deficiency. And until you get on a payment plan on this deficiency, they're continuing to send derogatory reports because you still have an outstanding balance for this deficiency. So in essence, in a foreclosure, at the end, you walk out still owing money. If you're lucky, you walk out with a reasonable payment plan. And now you're making payments on a house that somebody else is living in order to satisfy that debt.
Interesting.
Which is getting in the way of you moving on with your life. It's getting in the way of you applying for a new mortgage somewhere else or from being able to pay your other living expenses.
Wow.
Because you're still paying for a house you don't own.
Did you guys hear that? It's really, really important. So I don't know if you picked up on it or not. When you go through a foreclosure, you go through the process. The bank takes ownership of that home and eventually sells it to somebody else. But in that process, there's a deficiency that you're going to owe. So you're going to make an arrangement to still pay the bank. Meanwhile, that home has been sold to somebody else, and they're living in the home that you're making payments on.
Yes.
Right? Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's clearly with a short sale, there's none of that. We find a buyer, we negotiate the deficiency away. Your costs are pretty much covered, and you get to rebuild your credit almost immediately.
Right. Either you're doing a short sale and you're moving on with your life on closing, or you're going through foreclosure, walking out with a bill at the end, which may have taken you a much longer time period to get to. It's had a much more profound impact on your credit report, the end result of which is maybe you still owe $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, maybe more, and you're first contemplating how am I going to repay this money, or you're talking with a bankruptcy attorney.
Kind of seems like a long, arduous process as opposed to the options that are available, right?
Well, you're prolonging the process. You're allowing the credit bureaus, the banks, to continue to report negative information to the credit bureaus during this period of time unnecessarily, and you're exposing yourself to a deficiency judgment. And people don't realize, even when they're in foreclosure, interest is still accruing on the balance on their mortgage. So that mortgage balance during that process is continuing to go up. People think that, well, they're going to take the house and I'm going to be done.
Yeah.
That's only part of the picture. The property is worth whatever it's worth today. You owe whatever you owe on it today. Sometimes people think, well, I'm going to stay in the house for as long as I can until the bank takes it, and I'm not making my payments. You may not be making those payments, but the interest is accruing, and it's being added to that principal balance. And at the end of all that, the delta, the difference between what you owe and what the property sold for, is a bigger number that the bank is coming back for afterwards,
right?
By way of a deficiency judgment.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you're not going to pay the deficiency judgment. Maybe the court's going to issue an order. Maybe they're going to do a wage garnishment, where all of a sudden money's being taken out of your paycheck in order to satisfy that debt, and maybe you'll never pay it in full. Okay? But it's an unnecessary pain.
Yeah.
It's something that was completely avoidable by taking a few proactive steps rather than running away.
So the control factor here, and this is another really poignant point. The control factor is when I do a short sale, I, as the seller, get to agree and acknowledge what the deficiency is, what the house is going to sell for. It's in my control. It's still my house.
Well, assuming that the bank's going to not discharge the deficiency.
You betcha.
Which has been our experience in the large majority of the properties we've done short sales on. that the bank is accepting the sale proceeds
Yep.
as final payment.
As final payment. So the offer comes to me first, and I get to acknowledge that I get to acknowledge what the sale price is. And then my real estate, I, as the real estate agent, go and present that, negotiate that to the bank, and in the majority of cases, they're saying yes, we accept that if it's a market value-ish.
Well, in a short sale, you still have a voice about
Correct.
what the value of your property is and about what it should be sold for.
Yeah.
Okay, that the seller still has an interest in the property. The seller still can take pride in their home. They can still take care of their house to try and get best market price for it, so that the impact of the short sale is as little as possible.
Yeah.
And as you know, Tom, many times we've had properties where we're dealing with banks that have both the first and second mortgage on them, where sometimes we're actually still able to pay the first mortgage in full.
You bet.
Okay, that's not a derogatory report on your credit.
Right.
That's a paid in full.
Yeah.
Now, we may be short on the second, we may be doing a short sale only on the second,
Right.
but you're still paying that first mortgage in full.
Yeah. Yeah.
While if you walked away from it, you'd have two mortgages that you were defaulting on, two banks that were pursuing deficiencies on you, two banks that were continuing to report derogatory information to the credit bureaus, which is doing, I won't say irreparable harm to your credit, but it's digging the hole a lot deeper than it has to be.
Yeah, gotcha. And so from a financial perspective, and this is we'll end it here. What are my expenses to move forward with a short sale? As a seller, I've had a misfortune. I'm not able to make my payments, and I've been given advice as to what my options are. And the two I'm considering are foreclosure and a short sale. Now, for me, as a short sale, client prospect, what are my expenses to going through and implementing a short sale?
It's a good question, Tom. Most of the time, when we are dealing with people who are trying to do a short sale, the cost, the out-of-pocket cost to a seller is zero. Okay?
Yeah.
There are exceptions to that scenario, but they mostly relate to how far the seller has let this problem go. If the foreclosure process hasn't started yet, that there are no court costs that we're incurring, that there's no court appearance time that we're incurring, I don't collect any upfront fees. All of our fees are rolled into the sale. The bank allows reasonable closing costs as part of the sale. They pick up the closing costs, so that at the end of the day, the seller should be able to walk away without bringing any money to the table, without having incurred any additional out-of-pocket costs, that the costs are paid for out of the proceeds of the sale.
And as a matter of fact, in many cases, we're actually able to negotiate money through programs, federal programs, so that the client is actually leaving the closing table with cash in their pocket.
Yes, there are programs out there that allow the seller to do a short sale, have their closing costs paid, and possibly even walk away with a little bit of money for relocating, moving expenses. There's also some programs that allow some modest payments to satisfy other liens that might be on the property, if there are other judgment liens on the property, or the debts that have been attached to the property.
Yeah.
And, we deal with people all the time who might be behind on their common charges, who might be behind on their taxes on the house. All that gets rolled in to the settlement.
And the bank absorbs it, and so and they do it for a reason, because it's better for them financially to absorb that cost up front, then go through the foreclosure process and incur the expenses, the legal fees.
Well, if those are costs that are tied to the property, they're things that the bank is going to have to deal with, whether it's in foreclosure, whether it's in a short sale. They're aware of the fact that they have to satisfy a tax lien. They're aware of the fact that if there's another judgment creditor who's filed a lien on the property, while they may not have to pay the judgment, they have to notice that creditor who's potentially going to interfere with their foreclosure process. So they're willing to negotiate, and they're willing to work with people to try and help them resolve some of those things.
Yeah, gotcha. And just lastly, I guess conversely, it seems like with a short sale process, it's very probable that not only is it going to cost the seller nothing, they may leave with money in their pocket. Let's just kind of draw a quick parallel with what are some of the expenses, because there are expenses incurred with opting for the foreclosure route.
Well, there's many different ways to handle a foreclosure. Okay, unfortunately, many people receive notice of foreclosure and do nothing. Okay, which allows the bank to then get a default judgment against them. Judgment enters fairly quickly, and the marshals are out serving eviction papers. Could be within 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, this is here in Connecticut.
Yes.
We're talking. Yep.
At which point the owner of the property has really incurred no expenses in the foreclosure, but they've also buried their head in the sand, and things have happened pretty quickly, and their fears have been realized because now the marshals are at the door trying to remove them from their house.
Right.
Or they've filed appearances with the court, or hired counsel. They've spent on average $3,000 to $5,000 in defense costs in order to defend that foreclosure. Many times of which only leads to a short sale anyway.
Right.
That we go into court, we work with the bank, we go through a couple rounds of trying to work out a modification before the bank finally rejects the proposals, or before the the seller comes to terms with the fact that they really just can't afford this house any longer, and are now going, well, maybe we should do a short sale. The banks are not big on taking keys. They don't want houses. People often inquire about a deed in lieu. The large majority of the time when we inquire of a mortgage company about doing a deed in lieu, the response is, have you tried to sell the house? Have you tried to do a short sale?
Yeah.
That they have, in almost every situation, mandated that we put the house on the market for sale for a period of time before they would accept a deed in lieu.
Okay. So if going the foreclosure route, either they do nothing and they get foreclosed on. I want to make sure that everyone understands that that's still not the end. You get foreclosed on, that's not the end, because what happens typically is the bank will take over the house. They're going to sell it, get whatever they can for it, okay? And by the way, it's whatever they agree to accept on the house, right? It's out of your control, and guess who they're going to come up and hit with the difference after that?
Right.
Yeah. You guys, if you go if you do opt the foreclosure route, the price of the sale is out of your control, yet you will be hit for the deficiency of the house going forward while someone else is living in it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of all of it, you're still on the hook.
Yeah.
For the balance of the debt, and that balance is going to be higher than what it was because of the time that's passed, the interest that's accrued, the legal fees, the core costs that were associated with the foreclosure all get taxed onto your balance.
Right. Good deal. Guys, I hope that was very helpful. Stay tuned. There's going to be more information, put on this website. That's www.onlinecthomes.com. And, if you have any other topics that you'd like for us to talk about, give us a call, 203-268-4994. I'm extension 3. This is Tom and Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.